Okay, we're supposed to be live, and usually it's preferred to send out a notice that someone's going to do a Facebook Live event before doing it, but I didn't. This is spur of the moment Purim Facebook Live broadcast. First of all, you might be wondering why I'm wearing this baseball cap. This is no ordinary baseball cap. This is the official cap of the Israeli baseball team from last year's World Baseball Classic. And I love this cap. Israel, see, where is it here? No, wrong side. Israel. I love wearing this cap. I don't get a lot of chance to do it. And so today, this is my Purim costume. I am an Israeli baseball player. So anyway, one of the things about Purim that makes it stand apart from the others of the Jewish holidays is that it's actually the craziest of them all. And so it's a time for carnivals and plays and funny songs and that sort of thing. And it's kind of like extreme celebration because of the extreme event that happened when God turned the tables on our enemies who were seeking to destroy us. And yet again, God rescued us. But as I said, with regard to Purim, the rescue in this case was just that much more wild and crazy. And so I'm doing this. This is my afternoon coffee break. So if you've got yours, you can join me. But it's a special Purim coffee break because I'm having another one of my wife's delicious gluten-free Hamantaschen. In case you don't know, this is a special pastry for Purim. And on this one, well, my wife doesn't do the traditional fillings. Traditionally, it's either poppy seed, lots of poppy seeds. You've never seen so many poppy seeds in one place as in a poppy seed Hamantaschen. And the other most common one, and talking and chewing is not the most polite thing, but it's Purim. The other common filling is prunes, and we know how a lot of people feel about prunes. And so my wife makes chocolate filling and honey and walnuts, which I think that's what this one is. And I've learned a lesson already. It's very hard to do a Facebook Live broadcast and eat gluten-free Hamantaschen at the same time. So they're kind of sticky because these are the honey ones. So I'm going to have another sip, and then I continue because I want to share with you some further reflections from this message that I just posted. Maybe you've seen it. It's on my Torahbyte site, and I put it on 2 Twitter accounts and 3 Facebook pages. And it's a thought that came to me earlier today, and it had to do with Haman's wife. Haman is like the Dick Dastardly of the Purim story. Haman had become prime minister of Persia. The king appointed him like second in command, and issued a decree. I'm so sticky. Issued a decree that everyone should bow down to him. But Mordecai, one of the heroes of Israel, Jewish Mordecai, wouldn't bow down to him. And I grew up thinking my mom told me that the reason why Haman didn't bow down was because Jews didn't bow down to anyone, and that's not really true. And I won't get into that. That's what she thought. I believe her father, my grandfather, told her that. And sometimes our ancestors don't get it all right, as in this case. And so the reason why Mordecai would not bow down to Haman, and disclaimer, if I get Haman and Mordecai mixed up, please forgive me. So Haman's the bad guy, and Mordecai's our hero. Ta-da! Okay, so Mordecai wouldn't bow down to Haman because Haman was descended from these people called the Amalekites. And their story goes all the way back to Moses' day, and they tried to thwart the people of Israel from their journey while they're on their way to the promised land. And God said that they had to be blotted out, and they weren't fully blotted out. And then we get to the story of King Saul, and he's a whole other story, and what he did and all the rest. Anyway, so somehow some Amalekites survived, and Haman was one of the descendants. And so Mordecai would not show any deference this Amalekite descendant named Haman. That infuriated Haman, and when you get really angry, you start to act very irrational. And so Haman didn't only want to destroy Mordecai; he decided he wanted to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jewish people living in Persia at that time, in the Persian Empire. Quite instructively for us today, Haman actually went the legal route to get this done. He persuaded the king to pass a law decreeing that one day the people could rise up and destroy the Jewish people. So they actually made the murder of Jews legal. And I know a lot of people think that just because something's legal, it becomes something right, or that you can't do anything about it. And so here was a decree from the emperor, instigated by Haman, the prime minister, saying that on a particular day, which fell upon the day that it is today in the Jewish calendar, the 14th of Adar, that people would be free to not only pick on, not only make fun of, not only bully, but actually murder Jewish people. And so this went through, the legal system of the day and became established. So people think, just because something's legal, whether I like it or not, it's legal, so we can't do anything about it. Thankfully, Mordecai didn't think that way. Mordecai had the conviction that it was wrong to show deference to this man, and so he didn't. He stood by his convictions. He stood up when everybody else was bowing. And that's really, really hard to do. I think most people never, ever do that. Most people are too afraid to stand out from the crowd. One of the biggest values of our day, and I don't know if this has always been, but it seems to me one of the biggest values of our days is to fit in. It's to be cool, to be accepted by your visible group that you're part of, but even this perception of what's in society. We live according to just how we perceive things are, and we don't want to stand out from the crowd. We don't want to be noticed for that. We don't want to be criticized. We don't want to be yelled at. But often it doesn't take that much. What did Mordecai actually do? It was kind of more what he didn't do. He would not be compelled by the government to submit to their decrees. And maybe some of that's happening today. I know it's happening today in Canada, where our government is beginning to impose particular ideologies and approaches to life in society, and is calling people to agree with principles that might be against their convictions. Now, I don't know how everybody is handling this, but it's hard. It's hard to stand against stuff like that because you never know what might happen. And in Mordecai's case, he stood. He didn't bow. And next thing you know, he got, in a sense, he didn't get his whole people in trouble, but that was the result. Now Haman wants to not only vent his wrath upon Mordecai, the one person who wouldn't give in, he wants to destroy the whole people. Anyway, I want to get to the point that I raised in the message that I posted just a few minutes ago, and has to do with Haman's wife. Well, as the story goes on, there's when Mordecai's cousin Esther, who's become queen, gets into the act and eventually invites the king and Haman to a banquet where she's sort of setting the stage before she makes the request that her people would be saved. They have this one banquet together, and then the king and Haman go off, and she's preparing for the next day when she's going to make her formal request to the king. But anyway, Haman's delighted that he was the special person to get invited to Esther's banquet. But when he leaves, he sees Mordecai again. Nothing new. Nothing had changed. Mordecai never apologized, and he happens to see him. Of course, Mordecai doesn't bow down, and Mordecai is not Mordecai, Haman is even more enraged. And so he heads home and he's really, really upset, having a pity party, which seems to be his bread and butter. And his wife, seeing how he's feeling, he says, well, like, don't you know who you are? You're the prime minister. You've got pull. You've got power. You're friends of the emperor of this great Persian empire. You don't have to take this. So she comes up with this brilliant idea that Haman should have this 75-foot gallows made to hang Mordecai on, and not only get rid of him, but make a spectacle of him. And, this is just typical evil at work. So Haman heads off to ask the king to get this gallows built. And while he's waiting outside the king's chambers, the king had just been reminded of something that happened earlier in his reign, where Mordecai had discovered an assassination plot against him, and it had been recorded in the annals of the king, but nothing had ever been done to honor Mordecai. And so he's thinking, what should we do? And he asks if there's anybody out in the court who could advise him on how to honor Mordecai. So Haman comes in. The king asks Haman who he wants, what should be done for the man that he wants to honor, and Haman thinks it's him. And so Haman comes up with this elaborate thing of parading this person on the royal horse with royal robes in the city, proclaiming this is what happens to the man the king wants to honor. This all the time thinking that it was him, when actually, of course, it was for Mordecai. And so then the king tells Haman to do this for Mordecai. Time for another sip here. Very good. Tim Hortons. Now, I didn't get it by the ground coffee from Tim Hortons, original roast. Anyway, so here's Haman coming home after doing this humiliating act and tells his wife what just happened. And then she replies with this kind of sagely prophetic, wise statement, and says to her husband that if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of the Jewish people, then you will not succeed, but you will surely fall. What? Why didn't you say that before, when he was already embroiled with this evil plan to destroy Mordecai and his people? Why did you not tell him that it was going to fail then? What's this thing about making this great gallows and making a spectacle of Mordecai when you know Mordecai's Jewish? It's not like she didn't know that Mordecai was Jewish. That was the whole, remember, if up till now, Haman only had a personal vendetta against Mordecai, and it had nothing to do with his ethnic background and this sort of thing. And then finally, the wife finds out, whoa, Mordecai's Jewish. Oh, you better not fool around with him. You're going to be in big trouble. No, that's not what happened. What happened was Haman, knowing that Mordecai was Jewish, and of course, Mordecai's refusal to bow down had all to do with his identity as a Israelite, as a Jewish man, and it was all connected to history and God's decree concerning the Amalekites. Like, this was very, very rooted in Mordecai's heart. And then this personification of wickedness in this story reacts to the history by wanting to completely annihilate the whole people. That's what this story's about. So to think that by any chance that Mrs. Haman didn't know that Mordecai was Jewish and that this was an issue here, well, that doesn't make any sense. She already knew. So when she advised Haman about the gallows, let's make a spectacle of Mordecai, she already knew whose people he was. So what's going on now that this strange thing happened about him having to honor Mordecai? Now she's sounding like the prophetess, the Bible scholar, X plus Y equals Z. This got this figured out here. husband, you're in big trouble because Mordecai is Jewish. Like, why is she saying this now when she could have said it before? Well, maybe she, in a sense, well, we know she didn't say it before, and as I said in my brief post, much briefer than my explanation here, what I was saying was, that's what we do. That's what we do. We often think that people do what they do because they're, some of the mismanagement of their lives, the bad decisions they make. We tend to, and sometimes it's right to give people the benefit of the doubt, and often that's what we do. Oh, they didn't mean it. They didn't understand. They didn't know what they were doing. But that's not always true. There are people, either we know exactly what we're doing and we do the wrong thing anyway, or we deceive ourselves into thinking that we can get away with it. And so Mrs. Haman was aware that it's not really that smart to mess around with the Jews, but it looked like they were getting away with it anyway. Her husband was so offended by Mordecai, Haman managed to convince the king to pass this law, and the way their legal system in Persia worked at the time, their laws were very, not they were harsh, but the way they were established was so strong. Like they took their laws so seriously to the point that once a law was made, it couldn't be revoked. And so even though Mrs. Haman was aware of this dynamic, this kind of a universal force called God that had the Jewish people's backs, she was aware of that, and yet she thought they could get away with it until it looked like things were starting to fall apart. Well, now that her husband was made to look like an idiot out in the streets of that capital, escorting this Mordecai, who he had tried to get permission to hang on this gallows, she goes, uh-oh, we're in trouble, you're in trouble. But it was too much good information too late. And as the story goes, after she said what she said about you're not going to overcome, you're not going to succeed because Mordecai is of the Jewish people, the king's servants come and take him to the second banquet of Esther, and that's when Esther revealed Haman's plot against her people, and then Haman is the one, and what ends up happening? Haman is hung on the very gallows that he had made for Mordecai. And then later on, Esther and Mordecai are able to establish a new law which enabled the Jewish people to defend themselves, and so the day that was designed to be a disaster for our people ended up being a great victory. In fact, we read in the book of Esther that many Persians became Jews because they were so afraid of what was going to happen. And I just want to, so what I want to close with is the need to stand up. As I said, there's a lot of things happening in our day where it's kind of scary. Like we have this impression that things are the way they are because they are the way they are. The government passes certain kinds of legislation and we feel really stuck. There's this sense that there's this culture out there, this society around us, and they have these expectations of us. You make a comment about something and then you're villainized, you're made to, you're one of them, and because you're one of them, then we can't take you seriously. And as you know today, there's just so much polarization. People can't have a good discussion about anything, and which really means we're losing the ability to be free to think our thoughts and then express our thoughts freely, which was part of the wonderful experiment in the Western world, and the whole idea of freedom of conscience and freedom of press and freedom of religion and freedom kind of to be who we are and to express ourselves. And now, because we have this clash between how some people think it should be and then other people don't think that's right, they don't feel comfortable, and then they're villainized. and we want to have them penalized and this sort of thing. And so it's frightening to simply stand up, to be that one person, you know, in the class, to say, I don't agree, or I think differently, or at work when you know things aren't right and things are being done wrong, and the other employees are kind of being steamrolled, or decisions are made that are not good for the customer, and you know that, and you seem like you're the only one who knows that. Well, maybe you need to be a Mordecai. Maybe you need to be the one person who's going to stand up. And one of the things that I've experienced is that when one person stands up, other people begin to stand up too. But you know, who's going to be the first one? And it's got to be me. It's got to be you. We can't wait for somebody else to do it. And we have to stop kind of looking here, looking there to see what it is we're supposed to do. The point of this is, many of us already know what is right. And so now we just have to do it. And that is one of the big lessons that we're reminded at Purim time. And you just never know. By your standing up, maybe things will begin to go like from bad to worse before they get better. But Purim reminds us that they will get better. Good will always triumph over evil. God will have his way. And so let's do what is right, even when we have to do it alone. And then sometimes we get to celebrate and eat Hamantashen and celebrate things like Purim, but they become that much more fun the more we're like the heroes in the story and not the villains. And so, anyway, eventually this is going to get posted. If it's any good, I'll put a copy on YouTube. Share it, but don't forget to celebrate, have some fun. It's Purim. The good news has come in. God wins, and it's going to be okay, especially if we're on the right side. Happy Purim.